They laugh at your jokes, clap when you succeed, nod as if they're listening, but something always feels off. You sense the applause is hollow, the smiles come a second too late, and their silence, it's not peaceful, it's calculated. You tell yourself you're imagining it, but you're not. You're just surrounded by professionals, people who've mastered the art of appearing loyal, while secretly resenting every inch of your growth. They don't stab you in the back, they kneel beside you, and whisper just loud enough to distract your eyes. Here's the ugly truth. Most fake people aren't obvious. They don't challenge you, they shadow you. They don't tell lies, they become them. Seneca said, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you, not those who flatter, not those who follow, those who sharpen you." This video cuts through the noise, no sugar, no soft warnings, just 7 brutal signs that your circle is full of masks and how a Stoic man sees through them all. If that already hits something in your gut, like this video, subscribe and drop a comment. I see through them. Now, let's begin. 1. They echo but never challenge. There's a certain kind of man who always agrees with you. He praises your decisions, laughs at your jokes, and never challenges a single thought. At first, it feels like support. It feels like loyalty. But look closer, and it starts to rot. Because, truthfully, what you're dealing with isn't connection, it's a strategy. These people aren't standing beside you to build with you. They're clinging to your proximity, like a parasite to a warm body, not to uplift, but to absorb. They echo your words because they have none of their own. They nod, not because they understand, but because resistance risks rejection. And to someone who's fake, rejection is a death sentence. I once knew a man sharp, successful, respected in his community, who surrounded himself with what he thought were loyal allies. Every meeting, his ideas were met with unanimous approval. Every concern was brushed away with, "You're doing great." But when his business hit a rough stretch, silence took over. No one stepped up. No one offered ideas. No one took responsibility. The loyalty had never existed. It had only been agreement masked as support. What he thought was respect was really survival, people orbiting him to stay close to his influence, not his integrity. The Stoics would call this an illusion of virtue. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Fake people violate both. They don't offer truth, they offer convenience. And the danger is that this kind of companionship makes a man soft. It builds an illusion of wisdom without ever delivering correction. A Stoic man cannot grow surrounded by yes men. He requires the friction of truth, the courage of confrontation, and the sharpened edges of those who love him enough to risk offending him. If a man agrees with everything you say, never questions your views, never brings his own strength to the table, what you have is not a brother, you have a mirror. And mirrors only reflect what they think you want to see. Loyalty without honesty is manipulation in disguise, and manipulation, when left unchecked, turns into decay from the inside out. What's most dangerous is not their smile. It's their silence when you need challenge, their nod when you need correction, their loyalty only when things are easy. Because that's not friendship, that's shadow behavior. The next sign is even more revealing. It's not about how they behave with you. It's about the subtle damage they do once you leave the room. 2. They praise you publicly, but undermine you privately. Psychologists have found that passive-aggressive behavior is often more psychologically damaging than open conflict. Why? Because it corrodes trust slowly, silently, without giving the target a clear moment to defend themselves. This is exactly how fake people operate. They don't confront, they corrode. You don't hear the insult directly, you feel its echo. At first, it shows up in strange, subtle shifts. Someone who used to greet you warmly suddenly acts guarded. A colleague who once backed your ideas now pauses before responding. Mutual friends pull away with vague excuses. And before you know it, your name carries a weight you didn't earn. But you didn't imagine it. Someone planted it. Fake people weaponize subtlety. They disguise sabotage as concern. You'll never hear them say you're the problem, but you'll feel it in how others begin to treat you. They use phrases like, "I probably shouldn't say this," but, or, "Don't take it the wrong way," just enough to suggest doubt without appearing disloyal. It's not slander, it's slow erosion. And by the time you recognize what's happened, you're fighting shadows, defending yourself from stories you're never allowed to hear firsthand. This tactic is called reputation leaking. It's used by people who fear your growth, but lack the courage to confront you directly. They don't want to remove you. They want to redefine you quietly, strategically, and most dangerously, behind your back. To your face, they'll still smile, still congratulate you, but only because public kindness makes their private betrayal more believable. Stoicism offers a powerful defense against this type of character erosion: detachment from public opinion and unshakable consistency in personal conduct. Epictetus warned, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." What he meant was simple. Don't waste your breath trying to reshape the opinions of people who've already decided your story. You don't fight gossip with gossip. You don't beg to be understood by ears that were closed before you spoke. You remain rooted. The Stoic man understands that legacy isn't built through defense, it's built through time. Let your daily actions become your defense. Let your discipline expose their drama. And when others speak of you, let it be their words, not your reaction, that reveals their integrity. Because if someone celebrates you in daylight and dismantles you in darkness, they're not a friend, they're a liability in disguise. Next, we expose the one trait fake people can never hide for long: the pattern that always reveals itself when they think you have nothing left to offer. 3. They only show up when they need something. One of the clearest signs of insincerity is selective presence. You start to notice a pattern not through arguments, not through betrayal, but through absence. When life is hard, they vanish. No calls, no check-ins, no effort. But the moment you regain momentum, when the money returns, when the network expands, when your name starts echoing in the right rooms, they reappear with a smile and a request. They frame it as reconnection, but what it really is positioning. These people don't value your character, they value your leverage. They don't come for the bond, they come for the benefit. And once they extract what they want, they shrink back into the shadows until the next opportunity arises. This isn't friendship, this is transaction in disguise. But the Stoic man doesn't confuse availability with generosity. He understands that boundaries are not barriers, they are definitions of worth. You don't owe time, attention, or resources to anyone whose loyalty evaporates when you're empty-handed. Because the man who shows up only when you shine was never meant to walk with you in the dark. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly: the best revenge is to be unlike him who did the injury. In other words, you don't repay users by becoming one. You don't play their game. You end it by stepping off the board entirely. And silence is often the most powerful resignation. The psychology behind this pattern is rooted in opportunism. Fake people are drawn not to strength, but to what strength provides: access, power, reputation. They orbit not because they believe in you, but because your presence upgrades their image. And the moment you stop being useful, you become invisible, not because you changed, but because their purpose did. A Stoic doesn't give out of guilt, he gives through principle. And principle demands discernment. Generosity without wisdom is a form of self-harm. It teaches the wrong people that all they have to do is wait long enough, ask gently enough, and you'll fold again. If their presence is always preceded by need and never by loyalty, it's time to sever the illusion. Let them go. Let them wander. Let them seek another host for their hollow dependence. Because your time, your energy, and your spirit are not up for rent. Next, we expose the sign that's even more dangerous than what they ask for. It's how they react when you are the one who needs something real. 4. They compete with your pain. It's one of the most subtle and infuriating signs of emotional dishonesty. You try to speak up not to complain, not to gain sympathy, but to share something real, something hard. A recent loss, a sleepless night, a moment of weakness. You open the door to vulnerability, not because you want rescue, but because you crave honest connection. And that's when it happens. They don't pause, they don't absorb, they don't make space. They pivot. Suddenly, the conversation turns not toward comfort, but toward comparison. They raise the volume on their own suffering, hijacking the moment as if your pain is simply a cue for their spotlight. They'll say things like, "You think that's bad? You should have seen what I went through." The problem is, this isn't an exchange of empathy. It's an emotional competition, a race to the bottom where every confession becomes a setup for a louder story. I once watched a man open up about his divorce during a quiet dinner. He was measured, restrained. You could tell it still stung. But before he could finish, someone across the table interrupted with a smug smirk and said, "Divorce? Man, I've had 3. Try that, and then come talk to me." Laughter followed. The conversation moved on. But that man sat in silence for the rest of the night, not because he was weak, but because his truth had been minimized by someone too self-absorbed to listen. Stoicism teaches us that strength is not just shown in adversity, but in presence, the ability to sit with pain without hijacking it, without twisting it into theater. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." And being one means honoring another man's hardship without needing to trump it with your own. Fake people can't do this because empathy requires stillness, and stillness requires ego to shut up. These people are not interested in support, they're interested in dominance, even if it means stepping on your grief to elevate their own. The Stoic man doesn't beg for emotional oxygen. He recognizes when the room is poisoned and leaves. Because anyone who sees your struggle as a backdrop for their ego was never there to carry the weight with you. They were just waiting for the next scene where they could star. So, pay attention to how people respond when you're low. If they interrupt instead of lean in, you've already been dismissed. Now, let's move to something even more corrosive, because the worst kind of faker isn't the one who steals, it's the one who pretends to give. 5. They fake support but resent your progress. Studies in behavioral psychology have shown that people often experience schadenfreude, a quiet, almost unconscious pleasure, when those close to them stumble. It's an uncomfortable truth, but one you've likely felt before. And nowhere does this hidden resentment surface more clearly than in fake support. You hit a milestone, maybe it's a promotion, a successful move, a relationship breakthrough, or a moment of public recognition. The room claps, smiles surround you, but one face lingers in your mind afterward. Their smile didn't reach their eyes. Their hug felt like protocol, not celebration. Their "I'm happy for you" arrived just late enough to feel rehearsed. Something in the air was off, and the feeling in your chest wasn't pride. It was a quiet warning. This is the counterfeit cheer. It mimics encouragement while concealing resentment. These people don't openly oppose you. They wouldn't dare, because that would reveal too much. Instead, they mask their bitterness behind hollow praise and carefully crafted compliments. To them, Your growth isn't inspiring, it's inconvenient. It forces them to confront their own stagnation, their own excuses. And that makes you the threat. Stoicism trains a man not to chase applause, but to measure the intent behind it. Seneca wrote, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you." That doesn't include those who want to keep you at eye level for their own comfort. A Stoic man doesn't dim his fire to spare fragile egos. He doesn't apologize for rising. He simply continues to rise quietly, consistently, without waiting for permission. The psychology here is crucial to understand. For some people, seeing someone close to them succeed is a mirror they didn't ask to face. It reflects what they haven't done, and rather than grow, they shrink. Rather than ask how, they question why it wasn't them. So, instead of encouraging you, they keep you boxed. They celebrate only when your success doesn't stretch past their comfort zone. And if it does, the air changes. This is why the Stoic does not mistake words for loyalty. He watches energy, he studies patterns. If someone's celebration always feels strained, if their compliments arrive only when it benefits their image, trust your gut. That's not support, that's surveillance. They're not cheering for your win, they're monitoring it, measuring how far ahead you're getting. True support feels light. It uplifts without asking for credit. Fake support always has a tension beneath it, a resistance disguised as interest. Now, let's explore the last and most revealing sign of all, because nothing exposes a fake person faster than how they behave when the spotlight is on you. 6. They mirror you to manipulate you. Some people don't earn your trust, they manufacture it. And they do it with alarming precision. In the beginning, it feels effortless. They like the same music, they speak your language, they echo your opinions almost word for word. They nod in sync, they offer compliments tailored just right. At first, it feels like compatibility, but in truth, it's a rehearsal. They aren't revealing themselves, they're reflecting you. This tactic is called mirroring. It's a form of psychological mimicry used not to bond, but to bypass your natural defenses, a way to make you feel seen, understood, familiar. And once the trust is earned, that's when the shift begins. The subtle criticisms, the emotional leverage, the small manipulations that grow into patterns of control. You realize you weren't loved, you were profiled. And everything that felt like connection was actually calibration. A Stoic man recognizes the difference between authentic alignment and opportunistic imitation. He knows that real character takes time to emerge, and that anyone who seems too tailored, too perfect, too in sync too soon is probably more interested in influence than in intimacy. Stoicism doesn't demand suspicion, but it demands discipline. You don't rush closeness, you test it. You measure it not by how much someone agrees with you, but how they behave when agreement ends. Epictetus taught, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." In other words, it's not the behavior of others that breaks us, it's how we interpret it. And if you mistake flattery for loyalty or imitation for depth, you will invite manipulation into your life dressed as companionship. The psychology here is subtle, but dangerous. Mirroring works because it exploits the most human desire of all, to feel understood. And when someone offers that sensation instantly, you drop your guard. But a man grounded in philosophy does not confuse resonance with reality. He observes, he waits, he watches how someone reacts when he disagrees, when he draws a boundary, when he no longer feeds their narrative. The test is simple. If their version of you shifts the moment you stop being agreeable, they were never seeing you, they were crafting an advantage. That is not friendship, that is strategy. And the Stoic knows any relationship built on strategy, instead of substance, will collapse the moment you assert your truth. As we move to the final section, remember this: fake people don't always attack you, Sometimes they simply adapt to you until you forget who you were without them. 7. They disappear when you need depth. There's a moment in every man's life when the surface fades, when laughter doesn't cure the ache, when ambition doesn't drown the silence, when you need more than company, you need presence. And that's when the circle around you begins to shift. The ones who cheered for your highlight reel start pulling away when the credits stop rolling. They don't reach out, they don't ask, they don't stay. Because depth terrifies shallow people. They were never there for the hard questions. They were there for the attention, for the convenience, for the glow of being close to someone with direction. But when that direction takes a detour into grief, uncertainty, or isolation, they're gone not because they're busy, but because your vulnerability demands something they've never cultivated in themselves: substance. This is the final and perhaps most painful sign of all. Fake people vanish not in anger, but in avoidance. They don't betray you with a bang, they just fade. And in that silence, you see everything. You see who was there out of need and who stayed out of loyalty. You see who applauded the strong version of you and who remained when that version cracked. A Stoic man doesn't curse this loss, he uses it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look." When the noise around you quiets, you return to the only place where real power exists, within. The absence of false friendship doesn't weaken you. It purifies your path. You stop begging for consistency. You stop confusing presence with partnership. You stop apologizing for needing more than surface-level echo. Because a man who walks the road of truth will walk it alone more often than not, but never aimlessly. And now we arrive at the part most people skip, the conclusion not just of this list, but of a mindset. Because fake people don't just steal your energy, they delay your evolution. So, let's end this clearly, boldly, with the calm fire of a man who sees through it all. Conclusion. The truth is, fake people don't always stab you in the back. They smile, nod, and slowly disappear when you need something real. They're not loud liars, they're quiet echoes. And every time you ignore that tightening in your chest, that moment where something feels off, but you brush it away, you give them permission to stay. But a Stoic man doesn't live in illusions. He lives in alignment. You don't need to scream to protect your peace. You don't need to confront everyone wearing a mask. You simply walk away from the stage where the performance never ends. You choose solitude over noise, substance over flattery. If this video hits somewhere deep, don't keep it to yourself. Like it, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment. I choose real, even if it means fewer. Because a man with 3 grounded allies will always stand stronger than the one surrounded by a crowd of chameleons. And once you learn to see the difference not by their words, but by their presence, you'll never settle for the fake again. You'll walk lighter, live quieter, and never question your gut again. That's not bitterness, that's clarity. That's freedom. That's Stoic.